I'm going to start backwards and go forwards. All right? As we're trying to connect the dots here, one of the things I've noticed is there's people here from all over the United States. And as John was just talking about the Small Business Development Center, he was talking about Tennessee. Well, there's folks here from all over. There's folks here from Indiana. There's folks here from Kentucky. There's folks here from Florida. You know, there's folks from all over. And the one thing that I want to point out, the sincerity and the services that John just pointed out exist across the United States. You're going to find those services available to you. I'm that little dot, that star in Atlanta. I like being a star. I'm that star down there in Atlanta. Here's a list of my group across the United States, and we cover areas regionally. So if you're someone down in Florida, we have actually 2 offices in Florida. We have one in Tampa, actually it's in Clearwater, and one in Miami. And the state's kind of split in half. So if you're in northern Florida, my colleague Sandro Mertis covers northern Florida. My colleague Mary Hernandez covers southern Florida. The point being is the services that we're talking about, and as I back up about the services, the Small Business Development Center all exist across the United States. What makes me a little bit different is I work in the Office of International Trade for SBA. We're a separate division, and we all sit in what's called USIACs. That's those stars all across the United States. We don't sit in an SBA office. We sit in a USIAC. That's a U.S. Export Assistance Center. I sit in the one in Atlanta with my colleague here, Susan, and we're the finance arm of commercial services. And that's something that we've kind of left out of this whole conversation as we've talked about exporting. And one of the more important resources that are available out there to you. We sit in a USIAC because the U.S. government's decided that all the resources that are available to you on a federal side should be in one spot. So if you need service and you need to find out how to go ahead and get services, you can come to any one of those 21 offices around the United States, reach out to us, and you're going to find someone that can point you in the direction of a John, a Susan, or myself, or a commercial service office. Whatever you need to go ahead and move your process along. Okay? So that's the first most important thing. That's my connect the dots. I thought that was, I'd at least point that out, okay? So I connected some dots here. So everybody here has those services. Everybody's got a John. Everybody's got a Susan. Everybody's got a David, okay? To get the services done and get what you need. Now for SBA's purposes, I help provide capital. The SBA is a federal agency. We fund, as John said, like the Small Business Development Center. They're the counseling arm that help you go ahead and determine where your markets are. Commercial services that I just talked about are the group of people that help you find those clients in that country. If we tell you to go to France and take logs to France, well, that don't do you a whole lot of good. You need to know who my customers are in France. Where am I going to find those customers? And if I find somebody, who's going to vet them? Well, commercial services does that. They have commercial attachés in every embassy around the world. And their job is to vet those clients for you. Okay? So it's another piece of the pie. You've worked with John, you found your market, you've gone to commercial services, now you've gone to go ahead and you found that customer. The next step is you need capital. You need to expand. You need a bigger building. You need to buy a new saw. You need to go ahead and refinance some debt. You need to hire some new employees. You need to go ahead and get some working capital to fulfill a contract. You've got some foreign receivables that the bank won't lend against. And you need to go ahead and make those foreign receivables leverageable, that you can go ahead and use them to get capital. That's what we're talking about there. There's a whole series of capital, and our loan programs help provide all of that capital needs. Every single one. Okay? The difference is that my loans range from about $10,000 on the low side up to $5 million. I'm the small business administration. I'm not the big business administration. So if you're trying to go ahead and do business, we've got loans up to about $5 million that can assist you. If you need more money than that, you need to go see Ex-Im Bank. Okay? Ex-Im Bank is the big boy. I may look like the big boy, but she's the big boy. Let me tell you, she's the big dog. Okay? They're the folks that can go ahead and provide that larger capital. If I've already talked to somebody here today, they needed $10 million. Okay? If you need that bigger capital need, Exim Bank is the people you go see, and Susan's going to talk about that. But if you need the smaller capital to go ahead and do the expansions, to go ahead and get the working capital you need to operate, if you need to offer open account financing to your customers, if you're trying to sell in Turkey, and that, like Laney was talking about, and you need to offer terms to those clients in Turkey to get the sale, we can offer you working capital loans that allows you to go ahead and provide those terms. One of the big things I want to talk about, and I talked about this the other day, is indirect exporting. A lot of things that we've talked about up until now is about direct exporting. You're going to go ahead and you're going to take your product, you're going to ship it to another country. But we can also assist you if you're an indirect exporter, okay? If you sell to another domestic company, and I've met several large companies here that go ahead and they have supply chains. They buy products or services from someone, and then they then export it. Well, if you're one of those supply chain folks, if you've got a sawmill and you sell to a larger agent who then bundles that all together, containerizes it, and ships it out of the country, you're an indirect exporter. And you can get the same guarantees and the same loans that I'm describing that a direct exporter can get. Okay, so that's a big advantage because normally SBA, we have all types, as John talked about, the Small Business Development Center. Our primary business is domestic business, selling in the United States. That's why there's so many things coming here from other countries. We're the biggest market in the world, okay? But once you've determined you need to go ahead and you need to look for other markets outside the United States, and you're trying to do that, it may be that you're not going to directly export it, but you're going to indirectly export. You're going to sell to somebody else who's going to take your product or service, turn it into an export, and ship it out. They'll give you a letter that says that, and you can get capital, just like an exporter. Okay? Basically, for SBA, we are the Small Business Administration, so there's some common elements that you have to have in hand to go ahead and get assistance from us. You have to be small. Small means your size, and your size is determined by your NAICS code. Whenever you do your taxes, there's a NAICS code on there. It's a 6-digit number that describes the business you're in. You're in logging, you're cutting, you're a sawmill. What are you doing? Okay? That NAICS code then determines what your size standard is. Also, like SBA determines what's small business, my colleagues at Exim Bank has a country limitation schedule. They have a schedule that lists all the countries in the world. And they talk about the risk that doing businesses in those countries. Well, there's actually countries that it's illegal for us to do business with. That's the only thing SBA looks at. We say, if you've got issues about shipping to Argentina, because it's going to be real hard to find dollars down yonder, that's up to you and the bank to figure that out. But if you're going to ship to North Korea, we ain't going to lend you no money. Okay? There are 5 countries that it's illegal to ship to. They're listed right there right now. Believe it or not, Bolivia, Cuba, we hear a lot all the time about getting business with Cuba, but it's still illegal right now to do business with Cuba. Iran, North Korea, and Syria. So if your business plan that John talked about, and part of one of the requirements for getting loan proceeds, to get a loan, is having that export business plan John talked about. If it shows that you're going to ship to one of those other countries, you better have some way to go ahead and figure that out where you don't get arrested, because it's serious fines to do that. The product has to be shipped from the United States. It has to be U.S. products shipped from the United States. Now, you may have, in the case that we're talking about, timber, lumber, it's all U.S. products. We don't have to worry about that. It's just got to be shipped from here. There's a system called drop shipping. Say you had something you're buying. Somebody was describing to me about Caribbean yellow pine the other day, or yellow woods, I think it was. And there's a lot of that down there. You're buying Caribbean woods, and you're buying that there. You're having it cut, and you're shipping it to Colombia. That's drop shipping. Okay? If you're shipping that same wood from here to the United States, that's an export to the United States. It's got to be shipped from here for us to consider it an export. Okay? There's no content policy. As Susan will talk about during her presentation, there's a content policy. Logs, that's not a big issue. It's all U.S. logs, okay? But in some products, that's an issue. We don't have a content policy. SBA, we don't care where it came from. It's just got to be shipped from the United States from a U.S. company. Military sales, y'all don't care about. Business plans and 12 months export projections. That goes back to what John was talking about. It's a requirement of our loan programs that you've got a business plan. We need to know what your product or service is that you're either directly or indirectly exporting. We need to know what that is. We need to know what the end user country is going to be. Okay? And we need a 12-month export projection. How much are your export sales going to be for the next 12 months? That's what needs to go into a package when you go see the lender in addition to your financials. So when you're thinking about a term loan, you need to expand, and you need to go ahead and get a loan to where you're going to expand. You need a new building. You need that new sawmill. We have term loans that allow you to do that. You may have all types of, any of the things we've described there, all the way down to refinancing, where you've got business debt that you're paying high interest rates on. You need to refinance that debt and get it down to a reasonable term. Through our international trade loan, we can make loans up to $5 million. Generally, the minimum size on this loan for banks is about $250,000. Generally, I find the banks don't want to go under $250,000 on this loan, but they can go up to $5 million. We give longer maturities than a bank will normally provide for asset term loans, for fixed asset term loans. So as we described there, we can go up to 25 years on real estate, the useful life on equipment, up to 10 years on working capital. What you have to show, and remember this is what's in that plan, that you're either going to start or grow exports. That you're either going to start exporting or you're going to grow exporting, okay? Either directly or indirectly. I'm going to say that every time because indirect exporting is important. And that you can show that the loan is going to improve your competitive position. Well, if you're going to buy a bigger building, it's going to allow you to do more operations. It's going to allow you to store more inventory. It's going to allow you to go ahead and cut more inventory. That's what the competition we're talking about there. Next, our Export Express loan is one that we go ahead and allow where you can get either a term loan, like a line of credit, small line of credit, and these go as low as $10,000 up to $500,000. Excuse me. It can also be set up as a term loan, but generally these are lines of credit where a business needs small lines of credit, where you just, like a business credit card, you can borrow against it to do operations. Primarily, the big advantage of this one is you can use it for export development activities. If you're going to go and you're going to find those new customers, you're going to go on a trade mission to Turkey and you're going to find those new customers, you're going to go to France and look for those new customers, you can use this money for those export development activities. The loan, again, it goes up to $500,000. Same maturities that I just described on the other type of loan. Again, you have to show that you're either beginning or expanding your export activities. This money has to be used 100%, though, for exporting. On the international trade loan, the advantage being is if you buy a building, it can not only help you expand your exports, but it's also going to affect your domestic business. On this type of loan, it has to be used strictly for export purposes, either directly or indirectly. And then finally, our Export Working Capital Program. This is the program that allows you to go ahead and get working capital loans. Generally, the minimum loan I've seen on these is about $150,000. It goes up to $5 million. It's where you need capital to either where you're going to leverage through asset-based lending, where you're going to take foreign receivables, not domestic, but foreign receivables, and take a loan against those foreign receivables and export inventory. We can lend up to 90% of the value of your foreign receivables or 75% of that export inventory, and that becomes leverageable asset that you can then use to go ahead and operate your business. We can also do transactional loans. Transactional loans are where you've got a contract in hand. You need to borrow money against that contract to fulfill a contract. You get a contract from a company, another export contract, and there you're going to go ahead and you need to buy that inventory to fulfill the contract. Well, on a transactional loan, we can lend you up to 90% of the value of the contract or cost of goods sold, the lesser of the two. We can't lend you your profits, but we can lend you either cost of goods sold, which is usually what it's going to be, or up to 90% of the contract. 100% of what it's going to cost you pretty much to fulfill that contract. Okay? This is the lowest fee, because remember, on all these loans, there is a fee. On this one, we only charge 0.25% because it's a 12-month loan. It's a renewable line of credit that you renew annually. We charge 0.25% to the bank, and they're going to pass that on to you annually to go ahead and put this in place. So, export financing. We offer the full term of financing that you need. We're located in Uziax. We work with our partners. If you call me up and you say you're thinking about doing something, where am I going to send you? I'm going to send you to your local Small Business Development Center. And again, I'm going to end up where I started with the map. Where are we located? At the stars. For those of you in Georgia, work in Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, I cover all that entire 4 states. You can reach out to me. You've got my information. Thank you for your time.